Welcome to Politically Basic. I'm your host, Kyle Campbell. As we always do, we're breaking down the basics of all political issues and current political events so that you get to decide. It's a Newsom nonsense day, and I've got the Nick Shirley of California on the show with me today. What a perfect guest. It's Amy Reichert. Amy for San Diego, as you may know her from her social accounts, gaining mass popularity and fast as she leads the way to uncover mass fraud and corruption in the way of ghost daycares and more in California. Amy originated from Philadelphia, getting her degree from San Diego State and a graduate degree from Rockbridge Seminary. Then things get really interesting. Her career experience includes working as a licensed private investigator. Of course, she's good at exposing fraud. Combine that with her experience as a student worker at San Diego Juvenile Hall and as co-founder of Reopen San Diego. Amy is helping to save our state, and I'm so happy to have you on the show today, Amy. Thank you for being on Politically Basic.
Thanks for having me on. Let's save this state. Let's save America from Gavin Newsom.
That sounds amazing, and I'm with you on that. So of course you are good at this because your past experience, your education, and especially experiences at juvenile hall, private investigating would influence this work. So how did that all lead you to a run for political office in your past and to what you're doing now?
So I was never political before. I have a degree in political science, and anybody who has a political science degree realizes that there's no job openings for political scientists out there. So in my 20s, I located my biological parents. This was pre-Google. And I figured out I had a knack for it, and I became a licensed private investigator. Fast forward 2020, lockdowns, COVID pandemic, the world is shut down, but yet it was okay to have riots, and they were encouraging that. So I co-founded Reopen San Diego. We filed a federal lawsuit against the city when they tried to fire all the cops and firefighters and lifeguards. We won in federal court. And, that didn't happen in other cities. Their cops were fired. That led me to run against the chief lockdowner, Nathan Fletcher, who was the heir apparent to Gavin Newsom here. And I was in a D+30 district. And if anybody knows what that is deep blue territory. So I didn't prevail in that one, but I just kept speaking out and using my voice. And of course, what's happened in the past month with Minnesota and now California, it's been massive, like a tsunami.
Oh my gosh, what a fascinating background that you have. And it really has all come together here in you doing, I think, exactly what you are supposed to be doing. And wasn't 2020 and COVID just this horrifying, but also kind of incredible catalyst that we needed to kind of root out the worst of the worst who were brought to the surface during that time? I mean, it really exposed a lot for how much shutdown and cover up was going on. It really had the light of day shown on so much of this corruption and the intense regulation and restriction. So good for you. I'm so glad you did that. And I think America in general is so glad that you're doing what you're doing now. And so we have seen, of course, over the last several months, unprecedented fraud, theft of the American people's hard-earned taxpayer money being stolen, I mean, at a rate of billions of dollars under the noses of mostly Democrat leadership. And the question now becomes, Amy, did they know about it? Were they covering? Were they complicit? How could they not know about it? And we've seen this kid come out of nowhere in Minnesota, Nick Shirley, and simply do the simplest of things, right? You're a private investigator, or you have been in your past, so you know that that's a complex methodology you have to apply to kind of get to the root of something. And here is this 20-year-old kid walking up to doors and knocking on them and filming them, the simplest of kind of investigative methods, and producing really shocking uncovering and footage of what's been going on. Now, you have started doing that in San Diego and for the state of California. So I cannot wait to hear from you on how you started coming up with the idea to go and like kind of uncover these ghost daycares and what you have found in those efforts. Tell us all about it.
Well, I gotta tell you an inside scoop first. So Nick Shirley and his mom, they are coming to California. So
Okay.
get ready for that. And then, I was really inspired by what he was doing in Minnesota. And I'm like, certainly it is here in California. And he was, walking up to daycares with his cell phone, and he was seeing that there was nobody there at these daycares. I'm like, how could I do that in California? So I went to the source. I went to the California Department of Social Services, Child Care Licensing Division, and I started going just alphabetically, like an honest broker, one by one, reviewing reports from state inspectors who, by the way, show up unannounced. That's part of what they do to inspect these daycares in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week. And there was a pattern that started evolving very quickly. I would find a daycare that had 14 kids enrolled and 0 kids present when the inspectors arrived. There were even those that had 28 enrolled with 0 kids present. And there were even citations for things like, not having enrollment records of children, which would be an indication that you have real students. And they didn't have emergency contact information for parents. In some cases, they didn't have infant sleep logs. And I have documented cases where the inspector came 8 days apart and found 0 each time. But then the licensee, the person who owned the daycare, swore up and down, I had 15 kids yesterday for a half an hour. It's all in the reports.
Huh. Okay, so you're investigating, you're finding that there have been reports made, but then what happens after that? I mean, is anyone following up? Is anything happening to these daycares? Or is it just the report being filed, 0 kids, 0 documentation, no logs, no contact information, and then everyone continues on with their life and with their day?
I have to share something really sad with you. So there was one daycare that actually made the news a couple months ago. And the reason why it made the news is because there was a unregistered sex offender living in that daycare.
Oh my gosh.
This also happened to be not in the country illegally, and ICE arrested him. The state fined the daycare $500. That's it.
Wow.
So think about it. You can have an unregistered sex offender living in your family daycare, get caught, and the fine is $500. There's no fines for not having enrollment records. You get cited, but it's not the state that's paying these daycares. It's the non-government organizations, the nonprofits, the political allies of Gavin Newsom, who get these very lucrative contracts.
Right.
To dole out government subsidies to these daycares.
Oh, it's really a simple grift if you think about it, right? I mean, I talk basics all day long on this show, but this is really basic. It's like if you run a daycare, maybe you should have a kid or 2 running around. So at some point, I don't know, if you run an elderly care facility, maybe you have someone there. Maybe you have a couple files, a phone number that's connected to an actual business. They haven't done any of this. And it is so obtuse of them to just think, well, I'm going to sign up for this, file for it, say I have these kids, say I have these people here, say I have this staff, and this is our website, and this is our phone number, and no one's checking. No one is checking, to the point where now our fraud and our crimes are intersecting. We have sex offender illegals sleeping in the abandoned, empty child daycare with no kids in it. I mean, you cannot make it up. It is so unbelievable. And so now you're exposing it. It's amazing. We need you. We need 1,000 of you across the state. What is going to happen? Let's talk about the process, because I think that what I hear most often, and you probably do too, Amy, is when you're posting about this on socials and you're getting all this feedback from just average everyday people. They're paying their taxes, they're following the law and doing the right thing. And this is endlessly, mightily frustrating for them to see this fraud happening. And that's where our taxpayer dollars are going. And these people are just stealing. So what is the process here for rooting this out and getting some consequences applied and stopping this theft of everyone's money when you know as well as anyone, it is expensive to live here. It is not easy. The last thing we need is for more of our money to be ripped away from us for purposes like this. So what's the plan here?
I have some good news. Some of the comments I get on my ex are, and nothing's going to happen. No one's going to get arrested. Well, I can tell you that I have been in contact with federal law enforcement regarding some of the reports that I've been posting from the state of California. And I can tell you that they're actively looking. Let me just put it that way.
Okay.
I want to give you some other good news too, because the other thing that I get hit with, the San Diego Union Tribune did a massive hit piece on me on the front page last Sunday. Also, Nick Shirley too, calling us, right-wing citizen journalists, or, saying that we're inspiring racism, and I'm not even bringing up race. So this isn't a right-wing conspiracy. Right here in San Diego County, there was a federal criminal case. We had our own Leering Center.
So much leering. Everyone loves to leer together.
The name of the place was UMI Learning Center. And the president of the Learning Center was convicted, sentenced to 27 months. He has to pay back $3.7 million in restitution. And here's how the scam went. Again, he's been convicted. This isn't me saying this. This is a press release from the Department of Justice. He faked enrollment for 150 kids. And then he also had an arrangement with parents giving them a kickback every month. Oh. For the parents saying that the kids were there.
Wow.
So yeah, this isn't just theory. This isn't just conspiracy. This is real. And there's a huge gaping hole, especially for these family daycares who operate out of one-bedroom apartments on a third floor of an apartment complex with 8 kids. So
So there is hope. There are investigations. You're starting to see convictions, and people actually have to pay this money back and have some consequences applied. That is good news. And I think that I speak for a whole lot of Californians when I say that we hope that you continue keeping the pressure on here, because every last one of these needs to be shut down. It's now becoming a dangerous situation where it actually puts citizens and some kids at risk. I mean, we're hearing about stories, some are verified, some aren't, of, kids being dropped off. This is mostly happening in Minnesota. Kids now being dropped off at some of these Leering centers in order to show, if somebody does a drive-by, if somebody does a Nick Shirley, if someone checks in, that there are kids there. Some are just being left at the door. If you are now trying to, justify this scam by involving children, and you have criminal activity happening at those locations, you are just actively, neglectfully endangering these kids. And it's a really complex situation. I have to tell you, here in the state of California, several years ago, they enacted AB 403, which transitioned all foster homes into these short-term residential therapeutic programs, they called them. It was so that some kid wouldn't be parked at a group home, not foster homes, excuse me. They were the group home model transition to STRTPs. I went through the process and was part of a team that opened the first STRTP under that new law here in the state of California. This was for 6 beds, and it's a per month state paid stipend per child receiving shelter and receiving therapeutic resources in this home. I know the numbers well. They were not in the millions. I mean, this was barely getting by money from the state. The vetting process that we had to go through to get that home opened, we had multiple site visits. We had paperwork out the wazoo to prove that this was the programming, this is what we were doing. It's really mind-blowing to me that under Gavin Newsom's leadership, this was just right before. This process was happening in 2018. And he was elected in 2018 and took office in January of 2019. So this would have been the tail end of the last gubernatorial administration here. The fact that these people can apply to open one of these, learning centers or daycares or homes or whatever they're saying that they are, and receiving this amount of money from the state is just mind-blowing to, with no one checking, no one going to check on the address, no one calling the phone number, no one really following up. I mean, am I right? Is that the general understanding, that these just kind of opened and no one checked in on them?
I think there's yes and no. So currently what has to happen is if someone wants to open up a family daycare, for example, I'm not sure what the procedure is for others. Family daycare, they have to go through a pre-licensing inspection of the actual address where they're going to have daycare. And if they are going to move their daycare, let's say they're going to move from an apartment maybe to a townhome, then they have to notify the state, and then the state has to come out and do another pre-licensing check on that second location that they're going to open. So I do know that happens.
Yeah. There's some kind of vetting going on here.
There's some, but here's why. Yes, I think it's important to note that as I looked through the reports, I was really happy to see that there were citations in there. They would come to a family daycare, and there was an adult present there who hadn't been background checked.
Wow.
And the state did cite them, and then they ordered them to immediately correct that. So as far as like the health and safety of kids, I was pleased with what I saw in the park. It's the other thing that they are not there to inspect about, and it's these ghost daycares. And here's how it works. So the money comes from the feds. The feds give it to the state, and then the federal and state money, it doesn't go to the child cares, it goes to a nonprofit first. And then that nonprofit pays the child cares. So who's really watching all of this?
Not the state, not the NGOs, not the nonprofits.
Audits from the state, that are ordered for these NGOs, they do not show at the granular level who is being paid. And it's not public record. So no one's really watching the hen house.
Wow.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, this is really an interesting conversation, because what we've seen recently is that the federal government has paused a lot of federal funding coming into California. Gavin Newsom seems very upset by that, and that, he has been personally victimized by Donald Trump because we're not getting these billions of dollars in federal funding anymore. But also on the other side of that is, as the fraud is exposed, I believe the state was just required to pay $1 billion back in federal funding for misappropriating healthcare funds that was going just only to illegal aliens, people who do not have citizenship. The Medicare and Medicaid fraud is rampant. I mean, that's $1 billion. That's a good chunk of change. We just had a state audit here, which highlighted 8 or 9 industries and sectors of the state that were put into a high-risk category because of the misappropriation of funds. When Gavin Newsom took office, he was sitting on top of a $30 billion surplus, and 7 short years later, we've got an $18 billion deficit. The state budget has exploded. It is 75%, larger than it was, with just bloat. I mean, the financials of the state are a mess. And it's high time somebody starts taking a look and auditing all the way down to these individual homes and daycares. And you're the one leading the charge. So we really are so grateful to you in doing that. Is this going to be your kind of full-time thing? What would you say your current work and focus is right now? And are you just San Diego focused?
What's been really interesting is there's been so many San Diego stories that have had national significance. So it seems like there's a lot of activity here. It's easy to report. So yes, I do write professionally for IW Features, And I write about things like sanctuary state policies that are hurting people here. I write about some of the radical indoctrination that's going on in our schools and are being outlined in federal cases against some of these wayward school districts who are violating our constitutional rights of parents and kids. So yes, this is what I do.
Good.
Girl, let's go.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Well, San Diego has turned into kind of this hotbed of political madness down there. And, I'm a lifelong Californian. San Diego was always this beautiful, kind of more affluent, obviously a border community. So we've always had issues down there with immigration, but really a nice community, a community that you would aspire to be in. Of course, like high military presence, it's Top Gun country, and pretty conservative for the most part. That has shifted, especially in recent days. What would you say the kind of political affiliation makeup of San Diego is today?
Yeah. And, to your point, I've been a lifelong Californian. I've been here since I was 4. I was born in Philadelphia, but, I spent my whole life in California. I've never seen it as bad as it is. It especially has taken a nosedive in the past 5 years. So we have this situation where when you look at the registered voters in San Diego County, yes, it's 45% registered Democrat and it's 25% registered Republicans. They have a 20-point advantage. But they also have the advantage of the unions. So, for example, when I ran for office, and again, I was running in a deep blue district, I'm not a threat, right? I guess they saw me as a threat because the unions spent 1.5 million against me.
Wow.
So that's the unions really have a stranglehold. So it's not like these big corporations that are dropping money into campaigns anymore, at least not in California. It's the unions. So I'll say the quiet part out loud when I'm insinuating. I believe that these people who are elected, who the unions put all of this dark money into, they become the puppets of the unions, and the unions are the puppet masters. So that's where we are in California. We are fighting a machine, not just Gavin Newsom.
It's sad to see. And I encourage people to kind of look back at the history of San Diego. I think it's a cautionary tale and unfortunately a good example of how leadership have changed a city for the worse. It's not to do with the people. There are wonderful people there, and I think they have always been more reasonable and wanting to contribute to their community, to have a beautiful, healthy, safe place to live. And wow, things have really changed down there. I keep hearing about unions influencing politics. I think I'm going to have to do a whole episode just on that, and I could probably do a really long one on it. But you're so right, and I think people are starting to say that out loud. It's very appropriate to say it. It's what's happening. So much of that money is being put behind certain candidates who then will do the bidding of the unions, and we don't have a fair or transparent political leadership any longer. And so I would encourage everyone to keep watching what Amy's doing. Keep eyes on San Diego. I think that it's turning into kind of this almost a bellwether community for the state and for the nation. It's really amazing. Let's talk about some of those kind of more statewide policies that have affected your area and across the board. You know, we try hard to weed through them. We've got a full-time Democrat supermajority legislature. They crank out legislation and policy all day long. It's totally unnecessary. We could use a part-time one. What would you say, Amy, in your experience and working, so intimately on a lot of these issues, what would you say are the policies and the legislation that have negatively affected our state and your community the most?
I can give you 2. I went to our state capitol twice in Sacramento last year. And the first one, it was for a sensible revision to the sanctuary state law. It was called SB 554. And I actually sat next to a mom whose teenage daughter was uh, sexually assaulted, feel just awful even saying those words, by someone who had 10 strikes against him and who was in the country illegally. So it was going to go before the Public Safety Committee, which is led by the infamous Scott Wiener.
Ugh.
And it would have just required law enforcement to work with ICE in the case of convicted violent criminals. Right now, sanctuary state law does not require, it only allows. So that's how we keep seeing these incidences so tragically with people being murdered across the country, and being victims of people who are not here in the country illegally, who have committed multiple violent crimes. So I saw how that mom was treated in that public safety committee. She was treated like the enemy. Someone actually called her an opportunist for sharing her daughter's story. That's where we're at in California. The other one that I went up there for it was called AB 495.
Oh, I know that one really, really well.
Yes.
Oh, girl.
With a sheet of paper, somebody can walk into your kid's school and go, all right, here you go. I can take them out of school right now. And it didn't require any kind of ID verification. And it actually discouraged anyone who was presented with the paper, whether it was a school official or somebody in a medical office, from verifying. So scary times. And boy, we led the charge against that. We were able to get a lot of the bad stuff removed from that bill. But guess what? That bad bill that hurts parents' rights passed.
I spend a lot of time talking about AB 495. On the personal side, I do a lot of anti-trafficking work. I know that issue inside and out, up and down. We have the highest instances of human trafficking, both sex trafficking and labor trafficking here in the state of California. That legislation was worse than others I have seen the state put forward. And I think that's why it got so much attention, so many people speaking out. But at the end of the day, they did pass it. The problem with that legislation, and a lot I think that comes to us at the end of the day here in California, is that it was completely unnecessary. It wasn't filling a need. And this is why I am very loud about our full-time legislature, that we don't need it. They're creating laws that just gum up the system. It's more regulation. It makes it nearly impossible to, walk and breathe at the same time in this state, or to do anything. It's such a restrictive society out here. And Scott Wiener is a great example of a political leader who tends to be highly motivated toward protecting sexual offenders, traffickers, criminals, and vilifying victims and survivors. It is nonsensical. And I think that it might sound outlandish to people who don't live here and don't experience this on the day-to-day, but this is our reality, is that the criminals are protected. And of course, we are a sanctuary state here, and so we deal with everything that comes with that. But citizens, people who have citizenship, people who pay taxes, people who have proper identification, are treated almost as second-class citizens now in the state of California. I mean, this is just how I see this trend going, that others are elevated above, and it's a really dangerous direction. I don't know if you feel differently about that. Those are just my observations.
No, I agree. And there was a tragic head-on collision. It happened on Thanksgiving weekend right here in San Diego County. And in the car, the dad who was driving, U.S. Marine, mom, and their 3 kids. And they were in the head-on collision. And the man who caused the head-on collision was a 2-time DUI offender, arrested after the accident for a 3rd DUI. And as it turns out, he was only 25 years old. He had been ordered removed previously, but not deported. And the family, who I've actually met with in person, and I'd like to say that I actually have become friends with, Jackie, the mom. So Oscar, the U.S. Marine Sergeant, he's currently at Balboa Hospital Naval Hospital in San Diego. He has traumatic brain injuries. His leg was amputated above the knee because his knee was shattered so badly. And their daughter, Aria, was killed.
Oh,
So she has been speaking against Gavin Newsom's sanctuary policies. And I will tell you that there are media that are censoring her story.
help me understand this, because why? I understand why certain people in the political realm would want additional bodies into the state and into this country. I see the trajectory of the way of thinking there. There is such a movement to keep them here, to protect them, to give them rights. How far does this have to go? I mean, so many people are dying. So many people are being attacked, raped, murdered. Children are being harmed. I wonder if you have a sense of where this comes to a head. Because right now we're really clashing on this, and it's such a head scratcher. It's just so mind blowing that people would look at a situation like that. You have a child dying, someone being, paralyzed, leg amputated. I mean, these horrific things happening to people who are innocent and just simply out on the road at the wrong moment on the wrong day. And that's a very easy side to take. And so many people taking the criminal, illegal alien side in this scenario. So I don't know. Help me understand. I'm having a tough moment with this one.
It's about political power at the end of the day. San Diego County passed a super sanctuary ordinance at the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. So they wanted to go beyond state sanctuary law. Remember how I mentioned that state sanctuary law allows but does not require? They wanted to prohibit, even in the case of the most violent convicted criminals, with ICE working with local law enforcement. That's at the local level. It's political. Mm-hmm. If you bring up a story like Jackie and Oscar, and they're the Cruz Asensio family. I'd like to plug their GoFundMe if anybody would like to support their family. You get accused of being a racist when you bring up these stories. And immediately the knee-jerk response is, oh, well, white Americans are killing people in DUIs too. And so here's my response. I'm like, why are you making this about race? I never made this about race. I'm making this about this guy who was previously ordered removed and not deported. He's had numerous interactions with California law enforcement. He never should have been here. And I shared this really quick story. I'm a licensed private investigator, and I've done a lot of workers' comp cases. Mm-hmm. And here's the truth. If you own a company and you say to your employee, hey, take this package to the post office on the way home, and your employee does that, and either on the way to the post office or on the way back from the post office home, they are in an accident, you as the employer are liable, and they are covered under workers' comp. Why? Because they never would have been there. Yeah. And the same is absolutely true for people who've had multiple interactions with law enforcement. They've been convicted, they've had their due process, and yet they're here and they're not supposed to be.
Yeah. I might venture a guess that people would rather be called racist than raped or murdered.
Well,
I mean, does the term even hold any weight anymore? When
not
you
with
call
me.
people, does it mean anything anymore? When white people are called racist incessantly, conservatives are called Nazis constantly.
Yeah, it goes back to the lockdown days with Reopen San Diego. Mm-hmm. My background, I was raised Jewish. I had a bat mitzvah in 1983. It would come as a huge shock to the rabbi that I am now a Nazi or racist, but that's what I'm called now. Yeah. I did become a Christian in my 30s, and I worked in ministry and graduated from seminary with a master's in divinity. But the point of me bringing this whole thing up is they don't care. They don't care that the Cruz Asensio family not a white family, is speaking out against it. You're just a racist. And I wish I could say that it doesn't work, but it keeps most people silent.
Wow. I know it still does. I think you're right. I think it's amazing. And the other thing that is so harmful about that, about throwing that terminology around so senselessly, is that there are people who actually are racist in this country who are harming other people. There are people who believe that Hitler and Nazi Germany was justified in attacking and killing so many Jews and the Jewish people. There are people now who believe that the Holocaust never happened or that the Jews instigated it. And when you throw that terminology around unjustifiably, it desensitizes us to the horrors of what actual Nazis committed against the Jewish people and the horrors of what actual racism has done to people in this country. And it strips it of that meaning where it's supposed to be placed appropriately. So that's just one more reason that I cringe when I see it thrown around. You know, ICE made this recruitment video, and it had some traditional imagery that was like hyper patriotic, right? And there's the
Yes.
eagle and the shield and everything. And you know, I went on a news network and was on a panel with a woman who was liberal, and there was no logic to her argument. She just said, that's just Nazi propaganda. It is just, you know, like we were too quick to just throw those out as cover. And I think that it's doing us a lot of harm. I digress. But I do want to say too, you know, what this family survived and has had to go through. I know a couple of instances of similar situations. It's horrific. I know someone recently who almost died in a head-on collision because of this. And what is happening in a sanctuary state, in the largest sanctuary state, is that when you give benefits like a driver's license or a commercial driver's license to someone without any kind of procedure to that, they're not going to driving school, they're not, you know, learning the rules of the road. Sometimes they can't read English. They don't understand signage. They can't see what they're doing, especially with regard to commercial driver's licenses. They don't know how to drive. And that's just what it is. You cannot just hand over the right to be behind the wheel to just anyone. You have to properly train them to do this. I have personally been hit by someone who just was given a driver's license with no training. We're hearing about it more and more. I think this is a moment where we have to step back and just say, look, we don't want to strip people of rights. We don't want to obstruct people from having their freedoms, their privileges, their rights. But at some point, there is a process here that keeps everyone safe, that brings people into society in a way that keeps us collectively safe. And Gavin Newsom's California has level jumped that, right? And you can't just flood people in and give them all these things with no expectation of adherence to the law. It's like having the purge happen, but just for only one section of the population, and no one else can break the law or defend themselves. Of course you're going to have conflict. Of course you're going to have these horrible experiences. It's just not going to work. So I would love to hear from you what we can do about this. What do you think is the pathway forward, and how can people support your efforts and support this work collectively to better the situation here in California?
The most important thing is, sometimes we feel like our voices aren't being heard in California. And I have a group called Restore San Diego. And last night we actually met at a local bar, and 50 people showed up on a rainy night. And it's just about building communities. So no matter where you are, maybe you want to get more plugged in, find like-minded groups like mine, Restore San Diego, in your town. Or you know what? Start a Facebook group. That's how we started Reopen San Diego. We started as a Facebook group until we got censored. And then we took that cyber group, and then we started meeting in person. So I think that's the most important thing, is just show up.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who sees what you're doing or sees what Nick Shirley is doing and they think, I can do this too? Do you think that is safe? What advice would you give somebody who wants to go out there and start knocking on doors and checking things out for themselves?
That's where I've stopped short. So I've had a lot of people say to me, "Oh, well, Amy, can you just give me a list of 10, family daycares and I'll go out there and check them out." And the reason why I haven't done that is because some of these family daycares, as I mentioned previously, they're in apartment complexes on the third floor and they're one bedrooms, right? Or they're people's homes. Right. So I would just say anyone could be a citizen journalist. You don't have to be a licensed private investigator, but you still are obligated to keep other people's safety in mind, your own safety. You certainly don't want to be sued,
Yeah.
right? Just because you're a citizen journalist, it doesn't mean that you're immune from being sued. You absolutely can be. So, yeah, if you have a cell phone and you have the ability to Google and dig through research, go for it. That's what's amazing about this opportunity. And as a result, we're making mainstream news very nervous. And I like that because mainstream news censored us.
Of course they did. Of course they did. They don't like any of this. That's not the direction that they want to be going right now. But it certainly shouldn't stop you or anyone else. But I appreciate the advice just to use your heads, be safe, and don't go too vigilante justice on some of these situations. I love hearing from you. And again, I would love to get your more general thoughts on the state of our state, the state of San Diego. This is Newsom nonsense. There's plenty of it to talk about. What would you say is your favorite piece of nonsense from Newsom? Or maybe we could call it least favorite.
Just look at his social media. It's all nonsense 24 hours a day. It's called the Governor's Press Office. And there's one guy named Izzy and another guy named Brandon. And they are paid with our taxpayer money to run that account and to troll accounts like mine. In fact, they called me Donald Trump's stooge in a post. So that's an official post from the Governor's Press Office. So he spends a lot of time just talking about Trump on there. It's just Trump, 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 Trump all the time. And it's a massive waste of our taxpayer money. So watching Gavin Newsom play the fool on X or when he goes to Davos and he talks about knee pads, this is my favorite Gavin Newsom to date. Yeah. So
yeah.
Keep going, Gavi.
What a burn. You're a stooge, Amy. Oh, they gotcha. I don't know how you're going to recover from that one.
I don't
That
know.
one's bad.
Ooh, but the president did retruth a video of mine.
Oh, really? Which one?
Yeah, that was just a couple nights ago. I was on Fox News with Jesse Waters, and
I saw you.
Trump retruthed it, I think twice. It's I got to tell you, when something like that happens and the president of the God bless America, United States reposts you, first of all, you stop breathing.
Yeah, I love
and
it.
Then your arms go numb. I can't feel my arms. Donald Trump just reposted me. So, you know what? Here's the thing. You work hard. I work hard. And, I smile about something like that because it's like, yeah, finally our voices are being heard.
Mm-hmm. What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive.
You can communicate with the President of the United States on social media.
Yeah.
He knows who you are. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. He reposted me. I don't know if he knows who I am, but hey, give me a call.
Yeah. Absolutely. Help us out here in California. I think that for as much as we complain and everyone says, why don't you just move? Or how about you stop voting blue? Well, that sounds fantastic. We don't want to move. We love our state. We love our communities. This is our home. This is where our family is and has been from and has built a life generation after generation. And California is the best place on planet Earth. Prove me wrong. And we just hate the politics. We hate the taxes. We hate the regulation. We hate being stripped and drained and bled dry for this literal nonsense. Stop using our taxpayer money to pay for your trips to Switzerland on the PJ, your stupid knee pads. You're so obsessed with Donald Trump. They're red and they've got his signature on the darn things. All this other junk, your podcast, everything else, this building, this $1.5 billion building they're putting at the state capitol, sending rocks to Italy to be polished. I mean, there's so much. I could just have this endless stream of the nonsense. It is so overwhelming. And that's the reason I call it nonsense, because we're not just talking about bad policy, or we're not just talking about leadership we don't agree with. We're talking about actual ridiculous, absurd nonsense. So there's plenty of it. But Amy, let's do Gavin Newsom a solid here. Let's throw him a bone. What's the best thing he's done as governor of California?
That's a hard one, but okay, I can think of one thing.
Okay.
And there was this viral video, and it was Gavin Newsom under an overpass on the freeway, and he was cleaning up the encampments. And the reason why he was doing that, because there was so much public pressure. We all, of course, remember the Pacific Palisades fire, but there were a string of fires all throughout California. And in my city, Mayor Todd Gloria, who's a Democrat, said, oh, well, this is climate change, right? And that's what the governor was saying too. So every time a fire would pop up on my Watch Fire app, I'd go running out to the scene. And lo and behold, it was right next to a homeless encampment. And I interviewed people, and sure enough, it was started by somebody who was homeless. Either they were cooking or they were trying to do drugs. So the local media, they also were trying to suppress that part of the story. And we just kept bringing it to them. And finally, I'm happy to say that Gavin Newsom did something good. He actually got Caltrans to start cleaning up encampments. And these workers, by the way, were paid $75 an hour to do this. So I am seeing some improvement along our freeways. So there you go, Gabby. Give you a solid.
I'm really proud of you in this moment. I'm not super proud of Gavin Newsom because I know that was a 2-minute, video photo op. But I'm proud of you that you found something legitimate that we can say that's a check in the win column there for Gavin Newsom. You're highlighting that your narrative about it being climate change was wrong, and it was actually the homeless encampments. I can affirm that. I can affirm that, being from a community that has had this very same problem. They're burning fires, yes, just like you said, sometimes to stay warm, and they're not doing it in a safe way, and it burns half a neighborhood down or a side of a mountain down. That happens quite frequently. So thank you, Amy, for your honesty and for giving Gavin a win there. It's very diplomatic of you, but thank you mostly just for your heart for this state. Thank you for the passion that motivates you to get out there and make sure that our kids are being kept safe, because this is really what it comes down to. We work hard here. Having great childcare options would be amazing. It is kind of insult to injury when we don't have that, and we see these ghost daycares that are taking taxpayer money that is unwarranted and not appropriate and not earned. So you're doing a lot of great work out there, and we all say thank you, and we appreciate you so, so much. Why don't you take us out by telling us one thing that you wish everyone knew about these issues, about what's happening in California? It can be San Diego specific, that maybe we get wrong or we don't always hear.
I would say, and I don't want to blame people, because we really do have a media blackout. And so, find podcasts like Politically Basic to get the truth. Follow people that you trust on X, on Instagram, because the fact of the matter is your local TV news in California, your local newspapers, they're literally held captive by ideologies that are completely opposite of yours, and they are not telling you the truth. So that's advice that I would get. Just keep seeking the truth. And then I just want to meet people wherever they are. Maybe you're scared to speak out. because of your job. Maybe you work for the county or the state, but I will keep you anonymous if you have whistleblower information, and you can reach out to me, Amy from X at proton.me. That's a secure way to send me information, and we can get the truth out.
That's amazing. What an offer. And everyone, make sure you're following Amy on all socials just to keep up with what she's doing, to support her in this effort, and definitely email her if you have something that's helpful. I think that's amazing. The more we talk about these things openly, honestly, candidly, that we offer transparency and that we connect on the issues that we're mutually suffering through, the better we're going to do. Well, Amy, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today, for speaking so genuinely and just with transparency. We can definitely see your heart, your intelligence, and your commitment here in the state. And we're glad that you're a Californian. So thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Politically Basic. We're always committed to breaking down the basics so that you get to decide. Be sure to check us out at politicallybasic.com and follow us at Politically Basic so you don't miss an episode. And we will see you next time.